Good morning, and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Tuesday, December 15th. I'm Gary Stevens. The Master Gardener, Jane Muse, will join us between 10 and 11. She is with the Brine Seed. That's our Tuesday morning normal 10 to 11 o'clock hour. Patty Vandenberg in less than an hour with What's New Around Holland. We'll have an open line segment following the 11 o'clock news block. But on this third Tuesday of the month, we are normally joined in our first half hour by the Superintendent of Holland Public Schools, Dr. Brian Davis. And he joins us via a Zoom connection from the administration offices of Holland Public Schools. Brian, good morning and welcome back to WHTC.
Good morning, Gary. My pleasure as always to be here.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Brian, he'll be happy to take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. Before we talk a little bit about some of the things going on overall, and obviously the elephant in the room being the COVID-19 outbreak, Holland Public Schools had its Board of Education meeting last night.
We had a board study session last night. Our regular full board meeting will be next Monday evening. It will also be our organizational meeting. We are now on a calendar year cycle. So the board will be swearing in two board members who were re-elected to 6-year terms, Trustee Tim Medikeen, as well as Trustee Mark Woltman. And then they will be establishing their meeting dates and structure for the year, their committee structure for the year, addressing a lot of adoptions of current policies, a number of items on a consent agenda, and discussing the makeup for the year. So that's the organizational meeting that will happen about 7:45. But at 7 p.m. will be our regular board meeting, and they will continue conversations, everything from COVID to future facility planning and everything in between.
One of those subjects which was addressed by Saugatuck's board yesterday in terms of an update because they are looking for a new nickname for their athletic teams. They are retiring Indians, and its superintendent, Tim Travis, mentioned that and there'll be some finalists that'll be going over in the decision we made after the first year. What has been the feedback so far on the efforts to look at the Holland Public Schools athletic nickname and whether or not Dutch is going to be retired or maybe going to stay on as the nickname for Holland Schools?
Great question, Gary. We've had a lot of interest in this topic, and from different perspective and different points of view, lived experiences of individuals from our community, student perspective, alumni perspective, staff perspective, community perspective at large, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk with individuals and to understand their points of view. We've had nearly 130 individuals who expressed interest in being part of a committee to study that topic and to ask the question from a most memorable experience that you've had if you attended Holland Public Schools or an event, to describe those and to be able to glean what those experiences were. Right now, the conversation at the board level has been focused around the process itself. How inclusive can the process be? To what degree does it garner and facilitate a much larger conversation, not just around the use of a mascot, but what are our core values of the district, and how is equity and inclusion, as by definition defined in our strategic plan, how do they play out across the system? One just being the use of the mascot. That was the catalyst that to begin this conversation. They're in the process of looking at the facilitation of that work, and I've brought forward an entity for them to consider here from the West Michigan area, and to be able to look at what does that look like over several months. This is not a conversation or a decision that would be made in the context of a 2-hour meeting, but to really be able to engage in a thoughtful way that allows the opportunity for individuals with different perspectives and different points of view to really listen and understand and learn from each other, and eventually make a final recommendation to the board about how inclusive or not is that Dutch mascot. How do we balance and maintain tradition of the school district and honor our history and our past, but also with our foot in the reality of looking towards the future. And so I'm really looking forward to that ongoing conversation about what that will mean. Last night, board action was taken recognizing that this is a really important topic. They want it to be an inclusive process that engages a number of individuals, representing many sectors across the community. And while there is some cost associated with facilitated work like that, have also challenged me to be able to look at individuals who might be interested in helping to offset cost to really engage in a pretty comprehensive process like that. I've already reached out and have had individuals say that they're interested in supporting that kind of work because they see it as a much larger conversation. So again, whenever you have a topic like this, you have a lot of different perspectives and points of views, which is part of what we want to encourage. We want to really to be able to have a community conversation and discussion around that, and to underscore and emphasize no decision has been made about the use or continued use or not. It's a much larger conversation around what does equity and inclusion mean, not only for our school district, but what could it mean for our community?
395-1450. If you have a question for Holland School Superintendent Dr. Brian Davis, we've been discussing a little bit about this mascot question and some of the issues going on among the district. I do want to bring up a story that Peg mentioned yesterday, talking about enrollment numbers. And Chalkbeat Detroit did a story about Michigan's enrollment fell by 53,200 students this fall. And according to the story, officials nearly double, I should say, the enrollment decline of 10 years ago. And that officials are, shall we say, kind of wondering what's going on. What about Holland and its enrollment numbers? Has it gone down? And maybe some ideas as to what led to it? Is it just simply COVID related? Is it maybe fewer people being born? What is it?
Sure. Great question, Gary. Our enrollment numbers did go down for this school year, but not as low as what we expected them to be, which is good news for Holland. There are always several contributing factors to what enrollment looks like in a school district. I'll speak specifically to Holland. I know that we've been studying our birth rate trends here, not only in the city, but in Lake Town and Park Townships. And over the past several years, the birth rate has been down about 25 to 30%, depending upon which township or the city proper itself you're looking at, based upon data available from our hospitals. Now, that doesn't suggest or include those families who may have had a child in another community and then moved into our area. But birth rates overall have been down. I think that we might begin to see a slight uptick. Certainly birth rates tend to coincide with larger issues at a national scale. So when you have an economic recession, birth rates can follow along patterns with that. Certainly there'll probably be some impact with COVID-19. Let's be honest, long winter seasons can impact birth rates as well too. So there's just a number of factors that contribute to that. Affordable housing is another factor that contributes to the enrollment in a school district. Not only affordable housing, but the availability of housing overall. We know in our Holland community, it's a great place to live, work, and play. And houses in Holland oftentimes will sell before they even come onto the market, or they're on the market for a very short period of time, and oftentimes a seller may have 5 to 10 offers on the house and they get into a bidding war. And so as we've been looking to the future, working with a local real estate agent to say, what has been the impact of COVID-19? Have we seen a decrease or an increase in property values? What does the available market look like? And from what we were able to see and study a month or so ago, is the market is still very healthy in the Holland area. There is not a decline in property values. It continues to remain a very low inventory piece. So if you're moving to the area or looking to move into a larger home because your family is growing or expanding, it's still quite a challenge to do so. So I appreciate all the work that's being done by Housing Next. I read an article yesterday from Ryan Kilpatrick in terms of what's been happening over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of their study and being able to look at available housing. City Manager Keith Van Beek was at one of our recent board meetings to talk about a number of the projects that are taking place across the community. Some are specifically in Holland Public Schools, some across the border into Hamilton, and what some of the long-range master planning is around that. With respect to COVID, I can tell you that I spoke with a kindergarten parents who their child this year, it would have been their first child in school as a kindergartner. And is that the first experience they wanted to have with their kid coming to school and needing to follow all the different procedures and protocols? Some made the decision to attend school. Some made the decision to keep their child home for that additional year. And we talked about all the things that they could be doing as a parent to ensure that their child was ready for school the following year. And then we certainly have seen some families decide not to attend school either in person or in an online capacity, but move to more of a homeschool experience themselves out of concerns around the safety during COVID-19. Perhaps in some cases, families that I spoke with, they may have had extended family members or were taking care of aging parents that were very vulnerable and wanted to do everything possible to ensure their safety. So a number of contributing factors. I think the thing that we've been working across the state, and Dr. Michael Rice, our state superintendent, has really been encouraging all school districts to look at is who are those students that we don't know where they went, right? They're not enrolled face-to-face. They aren't online. We may not have had that personal connection with them to talk about their unique situation. Who may be those families still are kids who are out there, who are just not doing any kind of school? So really trying to reach out, doing home visits, those last points of contact to ensure that no child is missed and that their education continues. So there's no one simple answer to that. It impacts each community in very different ways.
You touched upon that last thing. I was going to bring that up. This report by Chalkbeat Detroit saying that Michigan does not have the ability to find thousands of students who may not be getting any education during the outbreak, and there is no statewide plan to get them educated. That's the conclusion that this Chalkbeat Detroit had. You're telling me maybe there is a plan, or at least there is an effort to try to reach these students.
There is an effort, certainly, to try to reach those students. Now, unfortunately, resources are challenged, and being able to have the personnel to always do that. But as a school district here in Holland, we have tried to make those contacts with the last point of reference that we had to do so. There are often cases where individuals move. We have a lot of mobility here in the Holland-Zeeland area, so it's not uncommon for a family to start the year in Holland, move to West Ottawa. We take care of their school of choice and enrollment pieces. They could yet move again. A lot of times that's related to affordable housing and ability to maintain and stay in the same household for a period of time. There are also pieces related to a lot of families have been adversely impacted by unemployment during this period of time. Even though there have been some extension of benefits, oftentimes individuals have to make different choices around expenditures. Sometimes individuals have cell phones that they have for a long period of time, and sometimes people purchase plans that last for a shorter period of time. So phone numbers oftentimes can change very quickly too. We rely a lot on family relationships. We're a community that generally takes very good care of our residents. We take care of our neighbors. We look out for each other. And so a lot of times we're relying upon other friends of the family or other relatives of the family to be able to know where they are and if they're being taken care of. And unfortunately, some families just had to relocate because since March, it's been a very long and challenging time. May had to relocate to take care of family members, may had to relocate for work, employment. And so sometimes we don't always get those requests for school records. And so if wherever they may have moved to, especially if they moved out of state, there's sometimes a loss in communication transition there. So I think to be able to say, have we found every student across the state? Certainly not. But I know our directive from the state superintendent has been utilize every resource you can to get out there to try to make sure you're finding these kids and making sure that they're all taken care of.
All right, Brian, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the COVID-19 outbreak. As we speak on this December the 15th, there are 5 more days at this point left in the current State Department of Health and Human Services edicts on the COVID-19 situation involving schools. Might be extended, might not. We don't know at this particular point. Is it almost a case, Brian, where, okay, tomorrow's the 16th. What lies ahead? You really can't plan that far ahead right now.
Well, we are certainly doing our best to be as nimble as we can, given a lot of changing variables for sure, and trying to stay on top of that and transparent with our communication. Just so individuals know, your area school superintendents, from both the public, private, and charter school sector, we're meeting on a weekly basis with the health department. Many of us are meeting twice a week. And I'm involved in 3 meetings a week with a COVID-19 human response team that is made up of many sectors across the community to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. And I've just really appreciated the opportunity to talk with other school leaders, much the same way as what we do around decisions around a snow day, which fortunately, by the way, I am loving this weather because we don't have to get up at 4:30 a.m. to consider that decision. So for those that love and like and enjoy the snow and all the activities, I'm really enjoying this reprieve from not needing to make a decision about that. But anyway, back to COVID. We really rely upon our health department and our epidemiologists there to give us the best information about what is happening in our community and being able to take their advice and guidance as the experts. You know, very few of us have lived through a pandemic like this. We may have a relative who's still with us who has lived through something like that, or we have stories about that. And so we're living through a lived experience that has a lot of reaction. It could be reactions of anxiety. It could be reactions of fear. It could be reactions of hope. It could be reactions of denial or acceptance. Beyond all of that, as a school leader and as area school leaders, we need to follow the science on this and really follow the experts. They are the healthcare individuals who understand and study the impacts of infectious diseases, who understand viruses, vaccinations, pandemics like this. And I think the biggest challenge is the numbers keep changing in terms of what is the positivity rate and when do you stop certain activities within the community that can impact and stop the spread. And I respect the fact and understand that those numbers keep changing because we're dealing with a pandemic. This isn't your everyday cold that we are trying to battle here. So there's got to be some flexibility and fluidity as we continue to learn about it. We are in school at Holland Public pre-K through 8, as are most districts in the Holland-Zeeland area. There are a couple that aren't for very unique reasons, given the size of their campus, the impact of the high school order not being able to be in session. A lot would have shared teachers across those communities, like a Black River, for example. But the rest of us are open this week. We intend to start school and resume on January 4, pre-K through 8th grade, unless there is an order from the health department that would dictate to us otherwise. As area school leaders, we'll be meeting again on December 30th to review the data before that start of the school year to make sure that it is safe and able for us to return back to school. We are fortunate in Holland. We have only had 2 related cases since March when this pandemic started. A related case is where it's probable that 2 or more individuals may have been impacted or infected with the virus based upon their interaction at a school event or activity. So we've had 2 of those, and they involved 2 kids, 2 students. And so we're really fortunate that we have not seen the spread across our school community within our school. That is not to suggest that we haven't had positive cases in Holland that has impacted both our staff as well as our students. But to our knowledge, at least of what we know at this point in time, those cases have all been related to events or activities that have happened outside of school. From a year to date, we've had 46 students who have had positive cases as a result of COVID. This was as of December 11. We have had a couple more that have come in this week. And we've had 30 staff members who have tested positive. We've had 0 school-associated cases for our staff. We've had 2 school-associated cases with students, and that was the same case. So when you talk about the overall percentage of folks impacted in our school community, it's been really, really small. However, it doesn't lessen the need for us to be very diligent about all those practices that we still need to continue and do. So the social distancing, over the holidays, not interacting with households other than your own, being able to limit your travel, of course, wearing your mask, washing your hands, all those procedures and protocols that we know can help to make us safe. we're asking anyone who might be part of our school community who's doing any international travel to quarantine and follow those guidelines following the trip. We know that some people may still be planning to do that. We're going to be, again, resuming school on January 4 unless we hear otherwise from the health department. We communicate out to our parents to be able to be ready, though in case those plans certainly need to change. And then, of course, a lot of discussion yesterday in our COVID-19 human response team across the community sector was a lot of conversation around the vaccines now. And when might we likely see those? And the education sector has been identified as essential employees, and we might see the ability to vaccinate educators in phase 1B. Well, that could be anywhere between 10 to 15 weeks out, depending upon which chart you look at. Well, that's still 3 to 4 months away, potentially, and then you have to have that second vaccination. So the ability to, it's great that we have the vaccines available and starting. We certainly need to look at the quantity that are available and being able to make sure that we're vaccinating in a very strategic way that's been outlined for our state. And our education sector is going to still be a long time before that happens. And so we're going to be into that April-May timeframe before there's a potential for all of our educators to be vaccinated. And so we're going to need to continue to be nimble and responsive and just say, let's do everything that we can as a community to keep our schools open because that's really important. I understand it's really important for mom and dad at home to be able to go to work, for individuals to be able to make sure their kids are moving forward in their education. And we know, I've heard from a lot of, it's hard to be a mom and dad and be a teacher at the same time and balance 3 or 4 kids on their Zoom meetings and Google Classrooms and all those things that are occurring at home. But I just truly appreciate everything that all the caregivers at home are doing across the Holland-Zeeland area during these remote non-learning times for our high school kids. That learning is still taking place.
One final thing, and I only got about a minute, Brian. I'm sorry I'm going to have to throw this on. It might be more than just a minute answer on this, but a couple of weeks ago, Jason Craner in the weekly segment of latest on Holland Public Schools on WHTC Morning News had a conversation with Dr. Anna Clausen, the Assistant Director of Student Services at Holland Public Schools, about what the district is doing to help students have conversations about mental health. And this time of year, you just compound the problem. Normally this time of year is a problem, not a problem, but it comes up, and now you have the outbreak, just adds on to it.
It does. I would just say, let's continue to want to do one of the things that the Holland community does well, and that's taking care of each other. So check in on those individuals, whether it be a neighbor, a family member, or a friend, and make sure that we're all doing okay this holiday season. Depression and mental health is a very real thing, and together we can combat that and to make sure that no one finds himself in a situation where they might do something that makes a decision that you can't reverse, and that's taking of their life or doing some other kind of harm. So let's take care of each other this holiday season. Refer them to Holland Public Schools. We have supports to help our kids.
Sounds good. Dr. Brian Davis, he is the superintendent of Holland Public Schools. Brian, I want to wish you, your family, and everyone with Holland Public Schools a happy and blessed Christmas season and also the new year. And if all goes well, let's do this again in the month of January. Brian, thank you very much.
Sounds great. Happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you very much, Brian Davis, the superintendent of Holland Public Schools on WHTC Talk of the Town.